House Democrats set new rules for impeachment and the inquiry this week, but Republicans say it's not nearly enough, with President Trump still not getting due process. Joining us now, Congressman Jim Himes, the #2 Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, which will conduct open hearings. And Congressman, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Good morning, Chris.
Ever since President Trump took office, Speaker Pelosi was very clear about what she thought needed to be the basis for impeachment. Here she is.
Impeachment is, to me, divisive. Again, if the facts are there, then this would have to be bipartisan to go forward.
It has to be bipartisan to go forward. Now, House Democrats have been investigating President Trump over Ukraine for about a month and a half now. There have been all kinds of damaging leaks of testimony that was hurtful to the president. And yet, when the big vote came this week, you did not get a single Republican vote. Didn't you fail Nancy Pelosi's own test? It has to be bipartisan.
Well, it is very sad that this is not a more bipartisan thing, right? In principle, Nancy Pelosi is right. But as you just experienced with Kellyanne Conway for 12 minutes of some of the most ludicrous TV and unfactual statement by a White House official I have ever heard, the Republican Party has now fully given itself over to being a personality cult for Donald Trump. And for good reason. Well, not for good reason, but for understandable reasons. Every one of my Republican colleagues understands that if they do what they know is right, and by the way, I hear them say they know it's right in the halls of the Congress, if they do what they know is right, the president lights them up on Twitter and they lose a primary election. So very sadly, unlike the Nixon or the Clinton investigations, this is going to continue to break down along partisan lines. It doesn't need to be that way, and it shouldn't be that way, but my Republican colleagues are unwilling to look at the facts here.
But if you do impeach on a strictly partisan line or a largely partisan line, it then goes to the Senate, where you would need 20 Republicans to remove the president. So if this is going to be a strict partisan exercise, we're going to end up spending a lot of time and to no effect.
Well, I disagree with the no effect. Chris, we are looking at abuse of power and a level of corruption here that makes the Nixon impeachment look like child's play. Remember, Nixon wasn't the guy who actually broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters. He just knew about it. Nobody died in Ukraine because Nixon held up aid to a very vulnerable nation. Nixon didn't fire any ambassadors because Giuliani didn't like that ambassadors. The abuse of power that we are seeing, and I agree with Kellyanne Conway on this point. Read the transcript. Read the language around "do us a favor, though." Understand that in that moment, Ukraine was at war with Russia, and the president had himself decided that no aid would flow. These are abuses of power by any stretch of the imagination that require a response.
Let's do some housekeeping. You know, whenever I ask people like you in your positions, when are the public hearings going to start, I hear soon. How about not being coy and telling me, when are the public hearings going to start?
My best guess, Chris, is that you'll see the public hearing start sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Remember, you can't be precise about this because we need to interview a few more witnesses before we're in a position to do public hearings. But my best guess is that in the next 2 or 3 weeks, there will be public televised hearings. By the way, with all of the protections that the Republicans have demanded.
Wait. We're going to get to that in a moment. Another simple process question. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton is scheduled to testify this week. Has the House, has your committee, have the Democrats subpoenaed him, and have you gotten a response from Bolton or his lawyer?
Well, I believe John Bolton has been subpoenaed. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I believe John Bolton has been subpoenaed. But remember, John Bolton is no longer an employee of the White House. So theoretically, the White House telling people that under their employ you can't show up doesn't apply to John Bolton. John Bolton is very important because remember, John Bolton, hardly a friend of the Democrats. John Bolton is reported to have said when he heard about the whole Sondland, Donald Trump, Giuliani thing, he called it a drug deal, that he didn't want to be any part part of. So I think it's important for the American people to know what John Bolton's concern was with this holding up of aid to Ukraine, this holding up of a White House meeting, and all of the other stuff that happened.
Let's talk about the rules that the House approved this week. I know House Democrats say, well, now the process is going to be very open, very transparent. One of the rules you passed says that once it gets to open hearings of the House Intelligence Committee that you're a member of, that the Republicans will have the opportunity to subpoena any witnesses they want, but subject to the approval of the chair, Adam Schiff. I asked one of your Republican colleagues on the committee about that this week. Take a look. Do you think that Schiff will block GOP subpoenas?
Well, I'm certain he will. I know that there's some witnesses that we want to hear from that he certainly doesn't want to hear from.
Can you promise, Congressman, that Chairman Schiff will not block any Republican subpoenas?
Well, first of all, I'll promise to make sure the facts are understood. It's not Chairman Schiff who blocks it. Under the rules that were passed, the Republicans, and by the way, this has been true in the hearings to date, they can ask the committee to approve a subpoena. If they don't like Chairman Schiff's answer, they can call for a vote in committee.
Yeah, but it's a Democratic majority. If Chairman Schiff says, no, I'm not going to let you call that person, the Democrats on the committee are going to fall in line. It's a big Democratic majority, and they're going to say no as well. Can you promise that Adam Schiff will not block any subpoenas?
I would say two things about that, Chris. First of all, these are the rules that have obtained in the House of Representatives for 240 years. In the Benghazi hearings, in the Clinton impeachment, the minority party can ask for a committee vote, and if they lose, they lose. It is a majoritarian institution. So the rules have never said that the minority can just decide to subpoena some conspiracy theorist who believes that the DNC server is in Ukraine.
Let me ask another question.
Have always been in place.
Let me ask another question. Will the House Democrats release the transcripts, the full transcripts, of all the hours of interviews that have been done with all the witnesses so far?
Yes, we will. And what the American people will see, despite what Kelly Conway and others say, they will see what I've seen, which is the president's most ferocious defenders, Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, Lee Zeldin, hammering these witnesses in these closed hearings, and their lawyers, by the way. So what the American people will see will be a process that afforded exactly the same amount of time and access to witnesses to the Republicans as was afforded to the Democrats.
Congressman Himes, thank you. Thanks for your time, and we'll, of course, follow developments in the House this week. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you, Chris.